Welcome to Support Life, a program focusing on current social issues from a life-affirming perspective. I'm Gavin Baulch and my guest is David McGrouther, a thinker, artist, ex-rock climber, amongst many other things. David, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, well, as the artist, I've got a piece of your artwork hanging in a foyer, which I might touch on later. Goes back to the origins of Earth and man. But where do your origins begin?
Well, I guess I was born at an early age in Sydney and lived in a place called Killara, which was a nice spot and a really good place to grow up.
Okay. Farm or city?
City, northern parts of Sydney.
Okay. But you're very earthy in a number of ways. You dig your fingernails into the cleft of rocks, and so tell me some of your journey.
Well, I grew up, went to school, had a good life. And then I suddenly had this amazing situation. I went with a whole lot of others in a bus. A lot of girls were going, and so us kids, mid-high school, we jumped on the bus because all the girls were going, and so we did. We went to a Christian camp centre, and there we were up at Lake Macquarie. And that was the very first time in my life that I had heard this good news. Didn't know anything about it. And someone on that night, on the Saturday night, shared this good news. It was about Jesus. And I was just blown away. I'd never heard such a message, which was so fantastic. And I actually sneaked outside. I remember sitting down beside a gum tree and bawling my eyes out. I don't know why, but it was just that sense of grace, a sense of that I can actually know God. I was stunned. I thought only people who wanted a crutch got it messed up with that stuff. But to know God and for that to happen in my heart, in my mind, it was a wonderful thing.
Huh. Okay.
And not just something that was one-off. It's been ever since.
Right. So here you are, a teenager, right? And the X factor kicks in. Come on, tell me more.
Well, I guess I was so thrilled about what I'd found, or what had found me, and I guess I was outgoing, sort of artistic. I was a long distance runner, and so lots of energy, and I suppose this new excitement, this love, this sense of truth and freedom, really, I just wanted others to know. So I guess my last couple of years in high school were very much part of that, and we saw hundreds of people coming to our meetings in the school. Great things happened, great things for people who were otherwise thinking suicide or all the troubles they had, and it was a great, wonderful time finishing school. Okay,
now no man is an island unto himself, but you found yourself hanging by your fingernails on a rock in the middle of nowhere. How in the middle of nowhere was that?
Well, you jump ahead a few years because I finished school and took a year off before going to uni, and went up to help in the Blue Mountains. And of course I love the Blue Mountains, and so I did lots of walks and all of that, but it wasn't long before I found rock climbing. So some bunch of guys, some good friends they became, they took me up a relatively easy rock climb, and from then on I was a bit hooked. And so for those next couple of years, this little in-between period in my life, yes, I climbed anything that I could get to.
But you were in the middle of the sea on a rock.
Well, that was one occasion on a well-known rock which comes out of the ocean 600 kilometres east of Sydney, and you jump off the boat, swim over, pull your climbing gear, and you climb up 2,000 feet there. And we'd gone there, a couple of mates and myself, or a few of us and myself, and we had gone there with a bit of I guess a bit of a joke in it, and youth kind of exuberation, We jumped off, swam over and climbed this thing, and in the name of all rock climbers and conservationists of the world, we had claimed that mighty rock, which didn't make the state government happy. So I then had to go in the TV and the state government and the other stuff. That was one of those things. But of course, even when I was 17, I walked across Nepal and went past base camp of Everest and up round towards Tibet, just that area, and doing all those kind of things, you know, when you're young and can get up and go and do a lot of things. So yeah, rock climbing was fantastic. Often solo climbs, and sometimes climbs with many hundreds of feet. You could look through, down between your legs and see, like my nickname was No Ropes. So that's the kind of, I guess that kind of passion for things. And so whether it was coming to know the love of God or rock climbing, I certainly put myself in it full bore.
All right, so you're known as No Ropes, but now you're going to get yourself tied down to something. Didn't you meet someone that was a honey?
Yes, I met Yvonne, and being, you know, committed and so on, after 6 weeks I said, hey, do you want to marry me? And she said yes. And I said, no, only joking. And I did that quite a number of times just for fun. And of course then she agreed again every time. And so we, after a few months, got married. Now, when I do pre-marriage counselling now, I don't give that story to any young people now, but for us it was great. We got married, and we're still married, and it's over 30 years, and we've had a great life with 4 children and 1 grandchild.
A grandchild named?
Willow.
Willow. That's a lovely name.
So she's been a tremendous help. Only a couple of months after we got married, we shared with all of our relatives who weren't really Christian or anything, and we shared that we really felt that we would be led to a place where I was to work. So there we were, a young couple, both working, and after those few weeks and then that month or whatever it was, or 2 months, we found ourselves, someone rang up and said, David, I think there's this job you should be at. And so I was called to this job, and I went up to past Newcastle on a faith mission and worked with graphics and printing and all of that, and also got the opportunity to speak about the love of God and these sort of things, all around the Hunter Valley and up into Bulahdelah and all those places. And that was a great couple of years. And then we realised after all of this giving out that I needed to go and get some training.
Okay, well, we'll stop there. You've been watching Support Life, and we'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Support Life. I'm Gavin Baulch, and my guest is David McGrouther, a thinker, artist, ex-rock climber, and amongst other things. Well, we're going to discover that. David, you came off a rock, you were free as a bird, then you got tied down with marriage and a few kids. Now you're thinking about what you're going to do with your inner space, some study. What was that all about?
Yeah, well, I knew that I had a great aunt once, and one day a letter arrived saying that when the 3 of us boys turned 18, and of course the younger one was younger than myself and my other brother, so he turned 18, so that week a letter arrived. The night before we got that letter, we'd been praying about, look, God, I'd like to do some study, you know, about God's Bible and theology and things like this for my future work. And so there we were. We decided we'd do it. Yvonne and I prayed together and had our little children. And there it was. A letter came in the mail, and this great aunt who had died all those years ago had sent it along just like that for each of us boys. And so I now had the funds to at least do a couple of years almost of the 4 years of that study in Victoria at the Bible College of Victoria, which is now MST.
My goodness. Some money in a mail just like that?
Yep, on the exact day after we'd prayed for that.
All right, did you honour that gift?
Certainly did. Studied hard. Fantastic time burrowing into the scriptures, and what a wonderful time that was. Very fulfilling.
Okay, did you get your hands dirty?
Well,
you burrowed into it. I want to know how far we went.
Well, it was rich and deep anyway.
Okay, and that led to where?
Well, then we went out into ministry, and we went to a church that had $168 a week in their total funds, a small, tiny little church in Wollongong, and that's where we went. But over those 9 years, what happened was truly miraculous. Many, many people came to find the love of Christ, to actually know God. And the church just grew and grew. And gradually we had many small houses of prayer right down through the centre of Wollongong. We saw thousands of people on the streets. We saw a new office I opened in the centre of the city, and we networked the city. I knew 160 pastors. We all got together, we all did things in the city which really helped the poor and reached out all over. And also I went to Korea as a result of that. And along with Calcutta, we had the Wollongong model in the cities track of the mid-decadal conference, which was worldwide with 5,000 mission executives from right around the world in every country of 160 something countries, and the Wollongong model was put there. And that really came from a little church. I used to, in my first 7 years there, out of the 9, I would go every morning and go up to the top of Sublime Point, a wonderful lookout over the ocean and over Wollongong, and I would go there by 6 a.m. every morning, rain or hail or shine, of the weekdays, and just pray and ask God, would you please bless this city and help God's people and the people in the city. And God certainly did in so many ways.
All right, that's Wollongong.
That was the first one.
Yeah.
Then I was called to a different church in the city of Melbourne, a wonderful church, been going since the 1880s. We were in the Gothic building opposite State Library, and but in those 5 years, like a transition period, we opened an underground worship centre, and so that we had over 1,000 every Sunday, and also 6,000 people using the building every week. So it certainly is phenomenal growth, and also whether the little church or the larger church, seeing us as a church every time sending people out, sending people to go and help the poor in other countries and share this message of the grace of God, the love of God and amongst people. And so vibrant, life-giving, helping the city, we were there.
Okay, now talk about some maybe other places that people were sent, and did art play a role? People were sent to many places, and I went on many trips myself as well, to many countries, Southeast Asia particularly, and other places, and I've also been to other mission things all in the Pacific and New Guinea and so on, doing other things as well. So that's a big thing on my mind and my heart, is the people who have got far less than us, but who are passionate to know this good news. The art, as I was studying, I always was interested, because I'd always done art, I'd always painted and so on, visual arts, and modern art was what always caught me, because I was also theoretically interested in how does it come to be? That sense of the generation of something that is creative, the whole idea of creativity and so on, that really always interested me. So after that big church, I went to the Bible College of Victoria, became the vice principal, and also on the side in those years, I was working on a thesis about aesthetics, which is about art and life and so on, and also about Islam as well. So I was quite busy with those things. One of the things in the art that really interested me was, as I said, how things come to being. And so around the walls in my house, I've got sort of part finished art on the walls, and my wife says, is that finished? And she knows I'm going to say no, because it's coming to being, that kind of thing. And so that sort of also made me look in the scriptures, but also in philosophy as well, asking myself a number of things. Some of the things that I'd read about were people like Ricoeur and Deleuze and all of these other people. I was just interested to see how they constructed the world in terms of their ideas about creativity and so on. And I remember that Ricoeur did one thing about 3 states of time, one being cosmological time, like the sun and all of that stuff that's bigger than us. The other one being phenomenological time, like how do things
manifest themselves? How do we live? And the other one between them was just simply, really simply, about historical time. Because, as Heidegger said, we live between the great time that's out there in the universe and the short time we live on this earth. So we are beings that have a limited time. And so in art, you can think about the generation of things that come to be.
Okay, well, limited time has caught up and we're going to take a break. You're watching Support Life and we'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Support Life. I'm Gavin Baulch and my guest is David McGrouther, a thinker, artist, ex-rock climber, and among other things. We seem to run out of time. David, take us back to this space and time thing.
Well, I was just thinking in art terms and in life, and reading a lot about that at that time. And I guess I was fascinated to think about time in terms of the big cosmological thing with the stars and the universe, and of course any scientist will say that, you know, well, we're trying to work out how it works and what it is, but then they don't know why are we here, or any of those perhaps more personal and more needed answers we need. So that was a real interest, and I enjoyed that time. But then I did find in the scriptures, in the Bible, the same kind of things about how relationship in this world and beyond this world comes about, and why are we here, and these sort of things, and how can we get to know God. And so that sort of led on to a fresh look at that.
All right, let's unpackage some of this fresh look at that.
Well, I suppose having realised that there was a point in my life where certainly none of us know it all, but we open ourselves to the possibility that God might be wanting to, or might have paved the way for us to know him in a real relationship. And so, I started reading the Bible afresh and looking through the Bible with those kind of eyes. And, I read verses like in Paul's letters to the Romans, and he says, I'm not ashamed of the gospel, the good news about God and his love. See, our situation, we've got terrorism today, we've got all of this stuff coming at us. Where is this good news? And the good news is that despite God is a loving God, and we see in the world a beautiful world, but it's not working as it could. And we got to be honest with ourselves. I guess humans, we muck it up, whether it's environmental stuff-ups or terrorism and all of these things. The problem is humans. God loves the world so much that he sent his only Son, the Bible says, Jesus Christ, so that whoever believes in him will not perish but have everlasting life. So I see a wonderful God who loves us. We've stuffed up, we don't deserve a thing, but he still loves us. And so he offers us eternal life, and it's a wonderful thing to know.
So art, this inner space, time, how's it all tied together, and what is it that's being said?
Yeah, well, look, if we spent 100 lifetimes, we still couldn't get to the bottom of all these things and all the science and all of the meaning of life as well. And so God's made it a bit easier for us. Not only coming in a person, in Jesus, who is so wonderful. People don't knock Christ. They'll knock all kinds of churches and things, but they don't knock Christ, Jesus Christ, because of what he did and what he said. No one knocks him. Anyway, so Jesus came and he died in our place so that we can know God. Now, how do you go from all of that to having it in here and actually knowing God? And the answer is that God generates that within us. God puts that in us. We might be struggling and working out in our own minds, but God puts it in us. And so God does that, and he does that. And in the scriptures we see that many things like this. The word is near you. It's in your mouth and in your heart. That is the word of faith. So when you hear the good news, the word of faith, there's something that can change in us. We come humbly, we come desiring, and God wonderfully fills that gap. And suddenly we realize something has changed because I'm trusting in Jesus. I didn't deserve it. He died for me. And somehow when that happens, it generates within us. And you suddenly realize that I really have a relationship with God. And it's a beautiful thing. We couldn't have done it otherwise. We were stuck in a bog, but we're rescued and loved for eternity. And that's what I love.
So are you saying that life, we're born and we're really this empty canvas, and then slowly an image forms, something's created, and maybe it's finished in eternity? What do you say to that?
Yeah, and I think in some of my paintings, we wandered around my house, and I know I've had you at my house at least once, and we wander around and we can see in those paintings something coming forward, something birthing, something generating, and that's what I'm trying to put in those paintings. It's an unfinished work, but it's a work that has been the recipient of love, and I guess it's in a physical paint way, it is saying about the love of God, the freedom to come to Him, though we are sinners, but He still loves us. And how to do that is simply with the mouth, to confess Him as Lord, to ask Him, and how wonderful and gracious He is. That's what I've experienced in my life. Right. And perhaps as I get a little bit older, more and more, I'm more thankful for this book that He's given us. But I'm also, because as I read it, faith grows. And I'm also glad that it makes me a better person as well, day by day, I hope.
Now, as you've communed with nature, climbed the rock faces and hung by your fingernails, how did that feed into the book, your understanding of yourself, your understanding of the world that you're in?
Yeah. I guess on the physical side, rock climbing and bushwalking and so on, I can see, along with the painting, I can see that this issue of space is very important. And it's a sense of space and a sense of oneself. And I guess you reflect on your life, you reflect on how you're going. And to do that also with a sense of God who's behind it all is a wonderful thing. They just come together nicely.
All right. Just to conclude, what would you sum up? People who are watching, who are creative, just naturally out there, reducing their carbon footprint and picking up a brush and doing a lot of reading. What would you like to say?
Well, we only have one life on this earth, and it is short. And I'd say that if God has loved us that much and sent His Son, and if Jesus has died an agonising death and paid my price and your price so that we can simply be in a relationship, I'd say that's got to be worth looking into. It's got to be worth it. And when you do, and you look into it and you read what He has done, there is something wonderful that changes over you, that's given to you. And I guess the thrills and so on you can do in rock climbing last for a time, but the joy and the depth of this relationship lasts for eternity.
Thank you, David. You've been watching Support Life, and that's all for our program today. Join us again next week. Goodbye.